Hi everybody, welcome to our weekly Bible study. We've been working our way through the 10 commandments, and tonight we're on to the 10th and final commandment. So as has been our custom, we'll read through the text at the start of our time from the book of Exodus chapter 20. God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me, or besides me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to the thousandth generation of those who love me and who keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold the one guiltless who takes the Lord's name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving to you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled and stood far off and said to Moses, You speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us lest we die. Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, and that you may not fall into sin. And the people stood far off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. Herein ends the reading of all 10 commandments, as the scholar Darrell Johnson calls it, the good law of our good God. And so tonight we're dealing with the 10th and the final commandment, which is a commandment against coveting. Now, I don't know about any of you who are watching, but I have to admit that I hardly ever hear this word covet, except when someone's making a reference to this 10th commandment. I can only think off the top of my head about one other time in my life where I've heard this word purposefully used. And that was when I was in university and about to go off to seminary to pursue my training to be a pastor. And one of the brochures I got from Princeton, where I did my divinity studies, the blurb in the front was written by the president of the seminary at the time, a good guy named Thomas Gillespie. And in that, towards the end of his intro, he wrote, I covet the education awaiting you at Princeton. You know, I was taken aback when he said that. It's like, he's using the word covet. I've always said that in a negative fashion, you know. But so what does it mean to covet? And quite simply, it means to earnestly yearn for or to desire something. So what President Gillespie is trying to say is, if you come here to study, you're in for a real treat. And boy, oh boy, you know, I wish I could do it all over again, is what he was trying to say, I think. So, but in the biblical witness, the commandment against coveting obviously has a negative connotation. Do not earnestly or overly desire your neighbor's house. You shall not earnestly desire your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. Do not covet it, is what it says. Right? And to illustrate the rampant nature and the power of coveting, there's a story, again, from Darrell Johnson, who's done a lot of work on the 10 Commandments, so I reference him a lot. And he tells a great story where he says that there's two men who went out in a business partnership together. And they discovered gold, which was their goal. They discovered 200 nuggets of gold, quite a lot. On the way back from the trip, one of the two men got badly injured, so injured that he was near death. And before he died, he told his partner, please give my wife whatever you want, right? Referring to the gold. Please give my wife whatever you want. And so the surviving partner thought about it, and out of the 200 pieces of gold, he gave the other person's wife 1 gold nugget. And now she was outraged by this, and she took the other man into court. And after listening carefully to both sides, the judge came to a decision, and the judge ordered the surviving partner, to give the other man's wife 199 gold nuggets. Now, he was dumbfounded by this decision. And when he asked the judge, why are you ruling this way? The judge replied, said, well, you did agree to give his wife whatever you want. And he said, yes. And so the judge looked at him and then said, well, it's clear that you really want the 199 gold nuggets. So I gave her what you wanted. And illustrates the power of coveting very well right there, I think. And up until this point in our study, we've covered various topics, haven't we? From the first 4 commandments, which deal more with our relationship with God, and the vertical relationship, and then commandments 5 through 10, which deal with more the horizontal relationship between us fellow human beings, right? And up until this point in our study, we might be able to surely admit that none of us are perfect. We've all, in our own ways, fallen short of the glory of God, but none of us are that bad, are we? You know, none of us have probably ever committed murder or these other great offenses. And so we're not doing that bad in terms, of keeping the law, right? Maybe we get a passing grade so far. And all of that belief shatters on the rocks of this 10th commandment about coveting. Nobody escapes from the reality of coveting, right? Even the Apostle Paul, one of the most spiritual people ever to live, found himself absolutely undone by this commandment against coveting. He even says so in his letter to the Romans. He goes, I would not have known what coveting was unless the law told me, do not covet, right? And this commandment, I think, this 10th commandment exposes the fallen nature in each and every one of us, right? I can look you each in the eye through the camera, and I can say, I am a covetous person, right? Again, we've referenced before the story of the rich young man who tried to be righteous in his own life, and he came to Jesus and asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus told him some of the commandments that we've already considered in previous weeks. He references commandments 5 through 9, but Jesus doesn't mention the 10th commandment about coveting. Why? Why did he do this? Because as long as Jesus stopped short of this 10th commandment against coveting, this rock upon which we all break, this young man could still trust in his own righteousness. But then when Jesus asked him to give all of his possessions to the poor and to follow him, it revealed this young man's covetous heart. He was grieved because he could not part with his possessions because he coveted them so badly, more than he wanted relationship with God. And so this young man was confronted again by the 10th commandment, right? In one very real sense, by not keeping the 10th commandment against coveting, right, we keep none of the commandments, especially the first one. You shall have no other gods, no other priorities before me, says the Lord. If we break the first commandment, if we don't keep God first, then we're automatically breaking the 10th. And the 10th pushes us back to the beginning, back to the first commandment, and around we go. And one can even say that the first and 10th commandments, in one respect, are actually trying to say the same thing. They're serving as the bookends of the entire 10 commandments, right? And where does coveting come from? You could say it comes from human nature. It would not be wrong. But I want to go deeper. Coveting springs, I think, from a belief that we all have, a belief that we need more than God, right? We talked in previous week about being people of, not being people of excess, but people of enough. Coveting calls us back to being people of excess, be people consumed by desire for things. The late comedian George Carlin, who could be rather off color, certainly, once remarked that if we follow the 10 commandments and we took them seriously, especially commandments against coveting and whatnot, if we took these commandments seriously, the global economy would collapse. Which, I'm not laughing about the idea of economic cataclysm, but he's got a point, though, is that so much of our economy is driven by the relentless pursuit of things that we desire, but strictly speaking, we do not need, right? Even in this time of lockdown, I mean, I've noticed, and perhaps you have as well, this distinction between essential and non-essential services. Now that's sometimes a judgment call, what's essential and non-essential, to be certain. But it does reveal the fact that much of what we pursue in society is, strictly speaking, non-essential, right? It doesn't make it inherently bad. It is what it is, right? So, and I think so many of our modern problems are driven by covetous behavior. Our feelings of discontent, of always wanting more, of keeping up with the Joneses, the amount of debt that people take on for non-essential things. The invention of the credit card is born directly out of covetous behavior, of spending more than we have at the moment so we can have what we want right now. And in the process of this continual pursuit of more and more and more, the more we try to fill our lives with this stuff in one very real and eerie way, the more we do this, the emptier we become, right? When we do not have the living God as God in our lives, as no other gods before the Lord, then we have this huge hole in our lives. Some people say a hole in our soul. And this hole opens the gate to coveting, to desire, to trying to fill our lives with stuff, to dull our pain, to numb our senses, right? And we become addicted to the things that we try to put in God's place, right? Can we all think examples of this? I mean, certain brands, which I won't name, but people line up around the block with the stores days, weeks in advance to get the latest, greatest, shiny thing, thinking, here's finally, I'll finally have contentment when I get this. And it's like a sugar rush for a little bit of time. Maybe it does satisfy. But eventually, whatever new, shiny, lustrous thing we get, it eventually pales and we lose interest. It becomes commonplace. Right? And we go, I need another fix. What's next? I need something else to fill this aching gap inside of myself. Right? And the truth of this commandment against coveting is this, is that we're all, every single one of us, we're all addicted to something. Now, I know this doesn't sound very pleasant, but I do believe it to be true. Our society has categorized certain things and passed judgment on things like some addictions, like addiction to drugs or to alcohol or whatnot, but there are so many, many, many other forms of addiction. We can be addicted to control. We can be addicted to being liked or addicted to approval from others. We can be addicted to our relationships with other people, addicted to our families. We can be addicted to our work, finding that that's what defines our worth, right? We can be addicted to our hobbies. We can be addicted to holidays, as if that's the only part of life that's worth living and everything else is a dreary slog to get through till we get to party time. We can be addicted to, pleasure, right? We be addicted to all sorts of things. We can try and fill the holes in our souls with all sorts of things that we think might satisfy, at least for a little while, but time and again will ultimately disappoint. We all, every single one of us, we all desire things. We all desire things. And several people in Christian history, who have great thinkers, suggested that all of our desires, whatever they are really in some way or another, a desire for God, right? And our desires can be very twisted, very warped, very misplaced, misfiring. But all human desire is really a desire for God, for the one who made us, the one who knows the number of hairs upon each of our heads. And so we all desire things. We're all yearning for something. And apart from God, apart from God's saving grace given to us in Jesus, whatever we desire will become our gods. Right? Left to our own devices, whatever we desire, power, wealth, money, fame, prestige, success, stability, control, you name it, those things will become the things that rule us. Right? As human beings, we're all made to worship something. And I don't care if somebody's religious or not, we all worship something. Right? And I think Bob Dylan, or I should say Nobel laureate Bob Dylan, it's so funny to say that, but hey, he was absolutely right when he penned these words. He said, "You may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You may like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil and may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody." So this commandment about coveting speaks about our desires, what we yearn for in our hearts and our souls. And my friends, we can say tonight, there's only one thing that can ever truly satisfy us, and that is the living God revealed to us in Jesus Christ, whose Holy Spirit lives within each of us. Only God can ever truly satisfy the deep thirst of each of our souls, right? And so the end of this Ten Commandments, this diagnosis of our desires, it points us back to the beginning of the Ten Commandments again. Back to that first one, which says, "To have no other gods besides me." It's pointing us back to this great truth that nothing else will ever truly satisfy us besides God. We can try as much as we want to fill our lives with stuff and noise and all sorts of things. We can numb ourselves for a long time, but at the end of the day, it won't work. Only God can ever truly satisfy, and only the one whose true peace, hope, and joy is in the Lord will ever be able to find the contentment and peace that we all desperately yearn for. So as we reflect on this last commandment through this week, and hopefully through the rest of the summer as well, I hope and pray that each of us will take the time to reflect on these commandments more. Just because our study is done doesn't mean we're done studying, if you know what I mean. And to reflect more about how God is calling us back to Him, back to relationship with Him in these commandments. How these commandments invite us into a true life of holistic flourishing and freedom with the Lord. So thank you all very much for joining me for this study on the Ten Commandments. I hope it's been helpful and meaningful for you. And as ever, even though we're taking a break for the rest of the summer holidays and our Bible study, the Kemnay Church is always here ready to help those who are in need. So if you need to make contact with us, please use the contact information listed on our church website at kemnayparish.church, and one of us will be very pleased to be in touch with you to help however we can. Take care, everyone. God bless you, now and always.